Hi, this is Mike making my video. Today is 5/12/2025 and it's 4:03 a.m. Uh, yeah, I'm just talking about happiness, you know, and euphoria and the differences, and of course, manifestation in all its forms. Uh, basically, uh, in order to give a man wealth, you have to take away from his desires. And usually the way that I've done that is by having manifestations and miracles. And miracles are basically things that don't really arise in the human heart, and no man has touched them, no hand has touched them. And those types of things are sacred, and they're treasures in heaven. And they're you open the windows of heaven, and it pours down a blessing so big you can't contain it. And one thing at a time. You slowly take away from your desires. Wave function gets collapsed, and a manifestation happens, a miracle. Something that's not molested by human hands, and it's something that hasn't arisen in the human heart, or in your heart, basically. And these are things that are contained with the pure potentiality of every event. And when they happen, the wave function collapses, and it gives you a pearl of wisdom, because you experience something. And experience is the greatest teacher. And let's say, for example, you have a manifestation of a miracle, and the wave function collapses, and it gives you something, something miraculous, and it shows you that all things are possible. And when that happens, your desires, are slowly taken away from you. And because a miracle happens, and it might answer 7 different questions you have about any particular thing. And it's broad, and it's far-reaching. You might read a book or something and have a question in your mind about relativity or quantum theory, or basically Newtonian's laws, and any one of those things in the space-time universe. And when these wave functions get collapsed, these miracles, you might experience 7 miracles in a particular season. And when that happens, it answers all these questions you've had that were burning desires to understand. And then, of course, when these happen, then you're more complete, and you understand things more. So then when it comes full circle, you're no longer plagued with all these questions or all these desires. And you're kind of left, with kind of an empty feeling afterwards, because you've had the extreme highs. The boiling off point, when you experience a major miracle, of some type, whether it's a person, place, or thing, or event. These things answer so many questions that you've had, about life in general, and you find out really ultimately it's from the inside. And it answers all these questions, and then you're kind of filled. And you experience kind of an aloneness and emptiness afterwards, in many ways, because with much knowledge comes much sorrow. And the more knowledge you have on a particular subject, the less, it's kind of like the journey itself, was major, was a major quest. And you no longer have the desire in your heart to pursue major things. And, that's because you've had these things answered for you. And, it's really simple. So you're kind of left with this feeling of emptiness in a way. It's kind of boredom, I guess, is the word to use. And it's a low level of boredom, and it's because you no longer have the desire to do the things that you used to do, or you no longer ask the same questions you used to ask. And that's simply because let's say, for example, you've wanted to be with a particular woman, and you did, and you're no longer interested. And then, of course, you've been with a lot of women, and it's just like the thing is, you're no longer interested in being with women, and that's because you've had all those things answered. So anyway, you move on, and then you live a simple life. It's like you're no longer seeking after certain things. So, it's like if you have great wealth, spiritual or material things, and you have that, it's not like you're miserable. It's just the fact is that you no longer have the desire to achieve certain things. And, that's not such a bad thing. Being bored is a low level of contentment. And, it's like euphoria, expansiveness, and bliss are things that you experience, but it doesn't happen very often when you get older. And that's because you've had all these things happen. When I was younger, I experienced a lot more bliss, but see, that bliss is basically the release of pain and suffering, fear and slavery. And once you get all those things out of your head, you're living a life where you don't have major desires anymore, and you no longer have fear and slavery and bondage. And it's actually a peaceful feeling, and that's kind of the peace that the Holy Spirit gives you. She's with you all the time, and when you wake her up, she is capable of doing that for you. But then again, the Holy Spirit, is this woman that's on a long journey with you, and she has a bunch of ideas, seeds in her knapsack. That's actually her lunch. So, she has all these seeds that are refined, but she spends them all by her knapsack gets broken, and the handle does, and it leaks all the seeds out on the road along the journey. And then you get to the end of your journey, and she doesn't have anything, and that's really the Holy Spirit. You get to the point where creativity is something that you don't really do anymore, and AI answers all that. And then, of course, as far as like writing a thesis or anything, AI can do that. And so anyway, that kind of takes away the need for doing that. And then, of course, robotics and all the jobs that are replaced, and it gets to the point where you really don't have anything that you need to really do anymore. And a lot of people get into an existential crisis, and they get to the point where there really isn't nothing left at the end of their journey. They've accomplished it. And so anyway, they get the dark night of the soul, they experience that, and then, you know, a miracle happens. You know, it could be something small, it could be something great, and you know, the wave function gets collapsed, and you know, boom, you feel euphoric. And a lot of people are always looking for that euphoria, and it's almost like sometimes a drug user are using, you know, crack or whatever, and your meth, and they do it, and then they do it for a period of time, and then eventually they keep doing more and more and more to try to achieve that same high that they used to achieve. And you know, ultimately, you know, they burn out their reward centers. You know, so they have so many games, or they have so many cars and whatever merchandise or women, and they've done that, and then it just gets to the point where they have burnout. And you know, burnout is really the end result of trying to use the same pathways. And then what you do is, the cure for that is you find different ways around that. You know, you find different things to do, and you know, different things to do to achieve the same high, you know, in some other roundabout way, by doing something different. And you take on some new challenge. And a lot of times, you know, when you do that, you know, it helps you achieve the high through a different means. And so anyway, it just gets to the point where you don't desire as many things anymore. It's like you've had enough chocolate pudding, and too much chocolate pudding isn't good for you, or too much sex. You know, I had sex one time with this woman, and I never thought I'd get sick of it. You know, but I did. And it's like I kind of went through that, and I ended up kind of feeling empty afterwards. And the reason being is because I was burned out. So, you know, I seek after different things, and you know, these different things that I seek after no longer, or actually help me. You know, let's say I learn a new skill set, and you know, I do something different, and then ultimately I just came to the conclusion that it's all on the inside of your head anyway. It's just chasing after the wind. It's meaningless, and it's all vanity. It's all things that you see. It's eye candy. And then the meaningless part about it is you see the, you know, the emptiness of some of these pleasures, and you put such a high value on it. You know, it's like sometimes a black guy will eat a cracker and he'll say that's the best cracker I've ever had my entire life. You know, and Eddie Murphy will say it was just a cracker. So, you know, it's kind of like that's how it is. And, you know, the things that you desired when you were a child, you know, you had that desire in your heart and that motivation, and then you achieve it, you know, and it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, it is, but you don't really worry about it too much. And you have that idea of reverse manifestation, where you just don't, you're not really affected by it one way or another. And, you know, you live a simpler life. And, you know, it's not incredibly simple. I've been like that before, and that wasn't that fun. But you look at a lot of inmates, let's say, or people in jail, you know, after a period of time, they adjust to their environment, and they don't feel as sad. And, you know, they're happier. And it says, you know, you own nothing and be happy. And, you know, planned obsolescence and whatnot. You know, and cars are disposable, houses fall apart faster, and, you know, manufactured houses and whatnot. And, you know, you just feel, you know, you don't have the desires that you used to. And life really isn't that much of a challenge anymore. So, anyway, that's all I have to say.